Got it.
Oh, now I gotta find my spot.
Okay.
All right. The first one, Dr. Daryl Morris and Dr. Shane Templeton are the leaders in the field of spelling development. Parents and many educators are often fearful about using invented spelling or temporary spelling when writing in class as young learners. One strategy that is very helpful for young learners is a word wall in the spelling list they work on a weekly basis. In order for us to help all children learn to spell words correctly, is the administration of a good spelling inventory. We will use the Daryl Morris Spelling Inventory as a means of determining the stages of development of our learners: pre-communicative, semi-phonic or
Phonetic.
phonetic, and then phonetic, transitional, and correct.
Okay.
And that's the first one.
Wait, what's this question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's really
Are we
not a
suppo-
question to it, but
Supposed to respond to how we feel?
I get,
Well-
yeah, I mean, I just kind of think about a kid that's in our classroom.
Yeah, I'm with twos. So my more so the spelling assessment is going to be pre-communicative because my kiddos are barely learning the letter that starts their name, let alone the sounds that the letters are making. So it's administered 3 times a year in kindergarten. So it allows the teacher to assess growth over time regarding strengths and weaknesses of each child's spelling development. Okay, so they're using the same thing that's administered 3 times a year. I think that that's beneficial because it shows a child's academic advancement, how little they know going into it, and then every time a term or a semester ends, they redo it and then they see just how much a child can build upon it. My daughter would do that in kinder, but then they also did it in first and second and third grade to see where they're at with like their reading words, their sight words. Once she got to third, it stopped. But I think it's important because you have to start somewhere, and some of these kids aren't getting preschool education.
Yeah,
So they're
right.
going into kindergarten blind, so they won't know, and it'll just show how essential early childhood is for development of sounding out words.
Yeah, I think like looking back at the stages, I want to say that my pre-K class is maybe in the semi-phonetic stage, probably a mixture of both depending on the child.
Mhm.
I was actually just spelling with my kids today, and they were writing like the words, and like it's kind of funny because like they obviously put like letters in that aren't there. They're like, this says the best mom, and it's like spelled completely wrong, but I was like, perfect, love that for you. But I also agree with you, Crystal, where you said that having the same test distributed throughout the year is beneficial to see growth. And I feel like there's things like that all the time in our life, like when you have like assessments, whether that's at your job or like with the kids that you do. I think it's super important. Plus it gives you a good, like you can't just assess a kid on like one thing on a one certain assessment and then do a completely different one the next couple of months, because you can't track growth in that. So
I'm kind of with you too, Marissa. I'm also in preschool, and I feel like my kids are probably in the semi-phonetic stage, probably a little bit across the spectrum of like phonetic and transitional. I have one student in the class who literally, his name is Ian, and every time he sees an E, he'll list all the kids in the class that start with the letter E, like their names. So when I was reading the semi-phonetic stage description, I automatically thought of him because he literally will go around all day. He'll make things out of Play-Doh, out of blocks. So E for Ian, E for Ezra, E for Enzo. I'm like, yes, you got it. So yeah, so I think that's where my kids are. And then also too, I agree with using one assessment throughout so you can track the progress and the growth and kind of see where they're heading, what needs more work, what needs more development, things like that.
Yeah, when my kids, also in the semi-phonetic, because remember I told you guys about the activity with their name, how I have, I sing the song about whose name begins with the letter K, and I make the sound, and they're like, oh, Kendall and Kahari, for K. And when I say, what friend name begins with a C, they're like Calvin and Miss Carmen. So yeah, and they like it. And I think because, like I said, when those kids came to me, none of them knew the first letter of their name.
Yeah.
They could not tell me what it was at all. So, and now they can tell me the first letter of their name, and they recognize their friend's name. If they see the letters somewhere, they're pointing to it, telling me, oh, that's D for David. So, yeah.
I feel like my kids are kind of like all over the place because I have some guys that are like nonverbal, and then I have other guys who can like read like that, and then I have some guys who are in the middle where they'll kind of do the same thing, like B's for like they'll say their name, or like B's for bear. So and I also agree, like using the same assessment like you guys said is always great because it kind of can like track their growth and just to see where they're at.
Right.
I remember when I was an aide, we did that, not specifically for spelling, but we administered the first test, like when the kiddos first started, and she was in tears because they didn't know anything. So she was so worried. So, and I didn't I didn't stay with her because I was like floating around, right? But I was like, it's only up from here though. It's only gonna be better from here. They'll know more the next assessment. And she's like, I really hope so. But it was a good place to start. And when we talked in the spring, she said that everyone's come such a long way. So I thought that was really cool because sometimes I get on myself like, oh my goodness. But it really does help assess the progress.
And I mean, also with the assessment, you can see where they are. So then you don't spend, if everybody's in a different place, you don't hold back the other kids who are a little bit farther farther advanced than the other one. So that is a fair way to do it. So that way you're making sure that you meet every child where they are versus starting everybody off at the baby steps when you have some kids that might be a little bit more advanced.
Right.
Yeah. I've even had like assessments, like I think assessments work, like even if they aren't the same assessment, like, but they're the same like formatted assessments. So like when I worked abroad, we would go over like 4 or 5 letters at a time, like in a specific unit, and then we would give them an assessment, and the assessment was like kind of like an activity workbook, but it was all laid out the same. So it was always the same type of thing, like, oh, like match the letters to the pictures, match the letters to the sounds, do this, do that, circle. And obviously they were always on different letters, like the different group of letters. But I felt like it was even helpful to assess the students, number one, to see if they got these letters down. And also it wasn't as hard for them to do it like later on because they knew what to do.
Yeah, they knew that.
And even that's kind of like assessing them in a sense, because like they're like aware, they know how to do this, they're not worried, they're confident in doing that. And I always thought those were super beneficial for my students.
That's really beneficial too for like the program I'm in, the instructional program, just having like that consistency and like keeping it the same so they know what to expect and like what is expected of them.
I feel like majority of my kids are in the semi-phonetic stage, but I do have a pretty generous size of pre-communicative right now as well, because I just had a bunch of brand new 3-year-olds just move up. So going just back up to the top, one of the things that I changed in my classroom is, I used to always have a word wall in my classroom, and we used to just print off different words that went with whatever theme or season. And then in a training, they brought it to our attention, like, are these words even meaningful to these kids?
Mm.
Like, by them looking at whatever it might be, like, I can't even think of a bad example, but like the ones you can print off a teacher pay teachers, like they're really not um age appropriate for them if you really think about it. And
Mhm.
that's where we got introduced to the I Can Read wall, which is the environmental print, because your 2-year-old in the car, you could be driving, they'll be like, Target. So
Yeah.
they know by identifying that symbol that that's Target. And then eventually they're going to be able to piece together that the letters on that building say Target.
Right.
So that's changed a lot for us. And in my classroom, I don't know if it's just because we're creative curriculum or if it's just the philosophy that they follow, but like I can't do any worksheets or anything at all. So I
Mhm.
struggle with coming up with some activities to do, especially that are literacy
Mhm.
in learning like the alphabet, because I am not allowed to pull children out of play to come do something. They have to want to do it themselves. So I have to think of something that's fun in order to grab their attention. So I like to do it a lot in the sandbox, and I always call it a buried treasure hunt. And then I'll have these cards with the alphabet letters on them, and we will find and identify a letter, and then they have to go digging for that letter to find it so they can match it to the card. Um, and then specific assessment that I do, because I used to be that person who always just looked at, oh my gosh, they don't know their letters. Oh my gosh, they don't know their numbers, they don't know this, they don't know that. I had to let that go and
Mhm.
realize that while they might not know it now, they're going to get there.
Mhm.
And everybody's going to get there in their own time and in their own
Mhm.
way. So each section of our assessment period for spring, fall, and winter, in the beginning, I have them write their name. And then towards the end, they write their name again. I mean, they write it throughout the middle too, but I document it twice. So I can compare the pictures to see how far they've come in writing their name. And where at the beginning of this stage, they might not be putting the letters in the right order. But then by the end, maybe they're only one spot off with one letter versus where they were before. So that's kind of where my classroom's at.
That's crazy that you can't do worksheets. I was
Yeah,
just
none
thinking
at
about,
all.
like all of the curriculum and all of the classrooms that I've been in the last 2 weeks, and it's not like worksheet like heavy, but like it definitely helps the kids like get practice with ABCs and stuff.
Right.
So I can only imagine the struggle. But in one of the classes they played hide and seek ABCs, which reminded me when you said you do the buried treasure,
Mhm.
and the teacher goes around and she has like flashcards with all the ABCs and she hides them, and then she calls kids to go find a letter card and bring it back to her. So that might be something that you could do too.
Yeah,
to
that's a
kind
good
of help with
idea.
that.
Yeah. And I know I did the letter match where I made like my own ABC cards. Just out of construction paper, I made 2 sets and then I put them in different areas of the room and just had the kids go on a letter hunt. Like okay, this is your letter. Tell me what letter it is. Go find a match for it.
Yeah.
And I would put it on something that begins with that letter. Like if it was computer, if it was C, I put it on the computer. If it was W, I put it on the wall or on the window. Or if it's the kitchen, I K for kitchen or whatever. But yeah.
Well, you guys have good ideas.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah,
We
I
did
love
we
that.
did do a letter hunt one time, and it was in the summer. We did it outside in one of the big yards. We went out and we put them on paint sticks.
Mhm.
So one teacher went out and put them all in the yard, all over scattered before we went outside to do it. But I never thought about doing it inside.
Mhm.
And those are some great ideas because now it's getting colder out and we're going to spend a lot of time inside.
Right. And like I said, I put it on the stuff that things in the room So that way, oh, they would be able to connect the letter with the word.
Yeah. Where did you put X? You got a xylophone?
Did I? You know what? I'm trying to think. Where did I put the X? I don't even know if we went to X because I only have it was like a quick small group activity.
Yeah.
I
I
don't even
put the
think I
X
got
on
that
the
far.
floor like you found treasure.
Oh, that's smart.
Oh,
Yeah.
X marks the spot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Or if you hit a picture of an X-ray or something, yeah. Or a
Yeah.
xylophone, yeah, or a xylophone, like you said.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Thank you.
Okay. And the next one, it's important to remember that writing, spelling, and reading are all, this is your word, Carmelita,
Inextricably.
linked together. Reading encourages good spelling and writing. When reading, children use their knowledge of letters, sounds, and context to work out what words to say. As you observe your young learners identify their spelling strategies, what do you notice? Reflect on your own spelling journey. How did you learn best? What did you struggle in your spelling? I only currently have two children right now who are showing any interest of spelling outside of writing their name.
Mhm.
And the one is a new 4, and he is starting to sound out the words. And my other little girl, she is just kind of writing down what she thinks.
Mhm.
Is how they're spelled. And then what do I reflect in my own spelling journey? I don't remember much about my own spelling journey. I don't remember much about my childhood, honestly. Because I was in a troubled class all the way through grade school up to high school. So my class, they were in trouble all the time. So I didn't get a lot of learning in, honestly. I don't think I struggled with the spelling, but the only thing that sticks out to me is I was always a person that had to sound them out in order to get it. Like I had to find a rhythm with it. Otherwise I couldn't spell. And I don't know if that's part of dyslexia or not.
It might be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I know for me in my classroom, I don't have any kids that are even interested in spelling. It's like, and I guess it kind of bothers me because I have 2 kids that'll be going to kindergarten.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay. And I just feel so bad. I'm like, okay, what can I do? How can I get them ready for this? And I'm literally well, we have a new education coordinator, so I'm going to talk to her because she just started. So my old education coordinator just gave us like a sight word list and was like, here, this was like last year. So it's just still the same sight word list. I'm like, but okay, you giving me no help, no help, no guidance on how to introduce these sight words to the children or whatever. It's like you kind of on your own. And that's one of the things about Head Start that just really bugs me because you were talking about no worksheet. I'm like, but you expect these kids to be able to write. So it's literally nothing, it's like, okay, what can I do to even just begin to give them something with the beginning strokes? It's like, I'm like, come on now. You just leaving me out here with nothing. It's like you expect a lot, or so you say, but then you don't give me a lot to work with.
Can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
Do you have any big books in your classroom?
Yeah.
So something I was just introduced to is called highlighting tape.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're reading your big books to your children, if you pick out the sight words, you use a piece of highlighting tape and you highlight the word that you're focusing
okay.
on.
Okay.
Every time you turn the page, if it's on the next page, you highlight it.
Okay.
Then you can go back through when you're done, once they've learned that word, and it peels off without ripping the page because it's
okay.
not quite as sticky as regular tape.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be something you might want to look into. Maybe that's a way that you can introduce it.
Okay. Yeah, because I
It's
like
called
I'm
high
kind of on
IQ.
my own. And parents, and then as far as with the parents, they want we just did parent conferences. And we asked them what goals would they set for their kids. And everybody, oh, I want them to know, be able to identify the letters, special letters of their first name. And I want them to be able to write the letters. Okay. So what are you doing at home?
Sure.
Because I can't do, it's trying to get them to understand we can't do here what you can do at home. You can put more focus on it. Here, we can't put focus on it like that. So.
Yeah, I agree. I have parents who kind of have it's good to have high expectations.
Right, but unrealistic for the age.
Oh yeah, and I work in a structured classroom, and like one of the kids that I have in my class who probably has the most like behavioral stuff, the parents want him to be in a like regular gen ed, like just regular gen ed, like no structure at all. And it's like yeah, like he academically probably is there, but like behaviorally, like he's not even close. And that's a little off topic, but just like stuff that I learned to like from my own experience and stuff that I noticed like with my kids. I know I always say this, but I really feel like singing to the kids and like just repetition is always something like very helpful, and like making a game out of it is fun. And I would say that writing, spelling, and reading are definitely linked together. So I know for myself, because I have dyslexia, I struggled with reading. So then I struggled with writing and spelling. And it's the same, like if kids struggle with writing, they're usually going to struggle with reading, or if they're going to struggle with reading, they'll struggle with writing. And then how I learned best was I actually went to tutoring for like a very long time. I went to tutoring for probably like 10 plus years. So I think like for me, it was just like repetition, and my tutor would actually like make up words for me. Because when I was younger, I know I was at like a very like low reading level. I think I was in like 5th or 4th grade, and I think I was at like a kindergarten or 1st grade reading level. Eventually, like I got to the 4th grade reading level, but so kind of like, so it wasn't like I was able to just see it, and then like repetition, like she used flashcards, we would play games. And then yeah, I definitely struggled with spelling. And the same thing, like just learning ending to sounds. I know when you have dyslexia, like sounding out stuff is hard. So they say like learning endings to words or stuff that like you could recognize. And then I always practice like knowing sounds, like knowing what a vowel is, and then knowing like the long sounds of a vowel. So that was stuff that I've done.
Oh, and I didn't answer the part for mine of how I learned with spelling. I'm older than you guys, so back in my day when I was in 1st grade, starting in 1st grade, we would have spelling tests, and we have like we had spelling books, and we have like 10 words, and we had to write those words. So she would start us off the first day, we had to write each word, 5 or 10 times. Then the next day we had to do definitions, and then the next day we had to do sentences. Thursday we were reviewing, getting ready for the spelling test. And Friday, when she gave us a spelling test, she would actually use the words in a sentence. So we would do a pre-test on Thursday, and then Friday we would do the actual spelling test, and she would use the words in a sentence. So we learned not just how to spell the words, but what the words meant, and then how to use them in a sentence. And so we did that all the way from 1st grade through 8th grade. And I think that really helped me with reading, because I always did well with reading. That was, that was back when they were doing like the Iowa test of basic skills. And I was always would score very high when it came to reading. Because, a big part of that is knowing knowing what the definition of words were, So, and I think that's what the problem is when you have with the assessments that they have now. The kids don't know what the definition of the words. They don't know how to use them in a sentence.
I don't know what it means.
Right. So you're giving them a word, and they're like, oh, okay.
That's what's going on with my daughter. I know it's a little off topic, but she's getting these words and they're having her read the paragraph and say, what does this word mean based on that paragraph?
Right.
And
Yeah.
she's like, Oh, and I mean, it's like zeros across the board. And she's like
Yeah,
the best reader though in the class, but her comprehension of what
right.
she just
Yeah,
read,
yeah. And see, we
they
had dictionaries, back then we had like a big, real thick dictionaries, like they have like those, I don't know if you guys ever seen those big Bibles that they have. That's
yeah.
about how thick the dictionary was. It was a big green Board of Education dictionary, it was citywide. Everybody had that big, thick green dictionary. And then they used to make the little pocket dictionaries. And we had those. That was like a standard. They used to be a standard back then, and now they've gotten away from it. And I think that's why kids struggle so much. Like you
I
were
think I
saying
need
with
to
the,
get her a little pocket dictionary or something. I feel so bad for her.
yeah, I mean that's really probably what you're gonna have to do, because otherwise, how would she know how that word fits and what it means in that sentence if she doesn't even know what the word means? It's like that. Yeah.
Pocket dictionary, I'll do.
I know when I was older, I don't know if like this could work too. But like when I was older, my teacher would have us like write the word in a sentence, write the word, and then like draw the picture, kind of what you were saying, and then do the definition. And then this is more though when I got older, she used like we would do kind of like an apples to apples game. So it would be, I think like the word would be like, I don't know, like nice or something like that. And we would use our word, like our spelling words that we like learned about and like, or no, sorry, we would use our spelling words and then we would use the cards from apples to apples and we would have to like pick our choice, what we thought like most related. So if the word was like nice and like they had a picture of like a dog or like a word or something, you would pick what you thought was nice. And it was just like always a really like fun way I felt like to learn about like spelling and definitions.
I like that idea. I just don't know how to do that for like the word terrain.
That's a hard
Oh
word.
wow.
You know what I mean? Like it's like one of those where she's like, "What is a terrain?" And I'm like, "Well, it's there. It's it's that. We're gonna, I'm asking her to use it in a sentence for me, and here I am. Anywho, um,
Yeah, definitely do the dictionary thing,
yeah,
because I'm like it's unfair to kids, and I hate that. I was like, to me, you put them behind the 8 ball from the jump when you do something like that. It's like, how do you expect them to do this if you're not helping them?
yeah. And I think that right now with COVID, it's showing how imperative it is to do reading and writing it, together and for the children to learn, because I'm talking with these pre-K and well, not only pre-K but kindergarten teachers as well, and they're telling me like they've never seen anything like this. The children from COVID are suffering because children can't grasp a 2D kind of thing without getting sidetracked from anything moving in their peripheral vision, right?
Right.
And now they're back in school and they're supposed to be doing all this stuff with
And they
these
can't
words
focus.
and sight words, and they can't, they are
You can't
at a
write.
loss. But the
Yeah.
teachers have told me they've never seen testing this low. Like of
Yeah.
all their years, they've never seen it this low because it's so delayed. And I think it's because if the teacher is having them do their writing journals at home, but they're not seeing what they're writing. They're not saying, "Oh, write this and that." And a couple of them asked for the kids to turn it in or to show it to the screen to get like credit, to see. And most of the time it was like a gibberish or they were coloring.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't writing anything.
Right.
And now their reading has gone down. It really is all tied together.
Yeah.
And the grammatical errors, I guess, a second grade teacher was telling me was like they don't even know sentences.
Mm-hmm.
Like no capitals, no periods, no commas. They don't know what to do. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how much they're linked together. I didn't really struggle when it came to reading or writing. I just got lazy because my parents didn't read besides magazines. So
Mhm.
I didn't really read, if I'm being honest. But me and my daughter, we just finished Harry Potter because, I don't want her seeing that. So like I limit my own screen time to try to like show her to read, pick up a book, like, the importance behind it.
Right.
but I think that it got me lazy when it came to reading competence and like the capacity. Because some people will use these words, and I'm 30, but I'm like, what does that mean? What is that? What word are you using there? Like, give me a synonym, like help me out here. So I think that they go hand in hand, and I think it's important for everybody
Yeah.
to be an example. And during my kids, when they nap, I don't allow screen time with my assistant. I said she can work on her homework. She's in school. I said you can work on your homework. But you need to be sitting next to them. And then if their eyes open, we're either reading, writing, or doing something with merit behind it instead of just on the phone scrolling.
Right.
So yeah. That's my take.
I have a couple of kids in my class that are interested in spelling, and the only way I know that they're interested in spelling is they'll come up to me and they'll say like, "Oh, Miss Marissa, how do you spell this? How do you spell that?" And there have been times when I've been lazy and it's been like, "Oh, sound it out, like try your best," like, and they're like, "No, we want the correct spelling." And I'm like, okay, whatever. Dang. I only have a couple students that'll do that are like actually interested. Others will like, they'll write, but they'll just write like random letters, or some of them don't even write letters. They'll just like scribble and say, "This says blah, 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 blah." And I'm just like, it doesn't say that, but okay. Which is nice. Like, I like having like kind of like the differences and seeing like, oh, like they'll say take these scribbles and it'll be like a whole menu. Just I think it's creative, but I'm glad that there are some kids that are like interested in like how to spell. Reflect on your own spelling journey. Well, back in the day when I was in elementary school, I was the spelling bee champion. I was a spelling bee champion, but then like because I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia until I got to college. So like after like elementary school, like it all kind of went downhill. Where I like could not spell for the life of me. I just like Tess, I have to sound out words. I would write words down correctly and they would look weird to me. And I even say it now as an adult. I'm just like, why does this word look so weird? Like, can you check, like, is this wrong? So I would always second guess myself. So then I would have like worse and worse spelling, which is surprising because like my reading never suffered. Like I thought personally I would read slower than others, but it never like hindered anything, I thought. And then I got to college and then I like had to take this like long test to see if I had dyslexia. And the lady that tested me, she was like, it's so vivid in my mind. She goes, "How did you make it this far without being tested for dyslexia?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Huh?" And she's like, "I don't know how you did it." She was like, "And I don't know how the teachers didn't catch it, but good thing you made it here." And I was like, "Oh, great." But the best way that I like learned to spell was I had to do repetition. Like I had to just literally sit there and like if it was like the word the, I'd have to go the THE. Like it would literally just sit there for hours and like repeat the words. And I would have like my mom go over them with me. And that's the only way I can learn how to spell. And even now I'm a terrible speller. Terrible. If there wasn't like grammar checks and like there was an autocorrect, some of my papers, emails, a mess. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like I said with the way it was with us having, like we had to write it a certain amount of times. So then it was like you said, that repetition.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, after I looked at this word I wrote this word 10 times. It's like, okay, it's burned in my brain now.
Exactly. Did anyone remember where you had to like write the word all the way down the page?
Right, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I remember. that the last one?
Okay.
Or-
Are we good, Tessa?
Is there
Now we
more?
have the
I think
next one.
there's one more on fluent readers and writers. I think we
And
should do the
there's-
first one though, because the other ones,
Yeah, we can do the first one.
yeah. It says, what does it mean to be a fluent reader and writer? Observe a struggling and proficient reader in your placement. What are some things you notice about the difference in their reading skills and abilities? Discuss specific strategies effective teachers utilize to develop fluent readers.
Usually like a fluent reader is like someone who can read words well and like is actually able to comprehend it, and same with like writing.
Mhm.
So like they can just keep reading, they don't have to like pause as much and be like, oh, like what does this mean, or I don't know this word or how to spell this.
Right.
Observe struggling. And so yeah, I would say like kind of the same thing that we talked about, like students that I observe that are struggling, like will do a lot of pauses, sound out
Mhm.
words, need more help. And then some things that I notice that are different in their reading skills and abilities. So I guess with struggling readers is just like, I would say time. I would say the biggest thing between struggling and proficient, I can't say it.
Mhm.
Time. Usually struggling readers take longer time. I think need more
Mhm.
help. Don't understand things as well. And then I also notice this too, like even for me, like need like step-by-step direction. So I can't, so like even like for reading, like they can't read like multiple things at once. They need to read it in sections. So like read the top, got it, then read the middle, where I feel like if you're more proficient, like you can read the whole thing through and kind of get the gist. And then different strategies to help develop more fluent readers would kind of be like slowing down, understanding what you're reading. Like kind of just things we talked about, like just understanding like the logistics, because I do think a lot of kids struggle with comprehension. I think a lot of kids can read stuff, but they don't really understand. And I also think that about other subjects, like even for math, like I have kids are counting. I'm like, but do you actually know, like, what does that 7 represent? Like, is it like these 6 cubes or these 7 cubes? So like, I guess like really breaking it down, making sure that kids are like actually understanding what they're reading, and then taking their time and not rushing through stuff. And then I guess like even using like context clues, like our kids are young, so like they can use like pictures to kind of help.
Yeah.
And then like sounding out words, and then reviewing basic stuff. So like maybe even reviewing like endings, like AT, I think is the big one that like people review, like cat, hat. And then yeah, I don't know, just different strategies.
I think that you're right when it comes to slowing it down, and patience plays a big part into being a fluent reader. The thing that when I was little, my sisters would say, like, you're still learning to read, and we are reading to learn. Like they were trying to be like Miss Sass back in, yeah. Trying to be all
Right.
cool about it, about reading, cool. But anyway, but the whole thing is that I think now back, and it is kind of like that shift, right? Instead of trying to pronunciate and articulate and make sure that the words are right and you're sounding them out, I think a fluent reader kind of knows, okay, now this word, I understand it, and it's now almost a sight word. I know it.
Right.
I know it. I don't need to chop it. I don't need to do
Right.
anything to it. It's in there. It like is locked in. But I think that reading skills and abilities, I find when I was in the higher grades, is that the lower readers were stressed out a lot more about learning to read. They didn't have patience within themselves. So I don't know if it came from home life, if it came from just within themselves and anxiety. But the more that they wouldn't get it, the more they allowed themselves not to get it and didn't want to get it. Like they gave up almost. And it was that
Oh, yeah.
encouragement and that push, gentle push you know, like to keep going, to keep doing this. And I found that partner reading, that doing things with partners, that helped too. Because, okay, you're having a word. Do you want to ask your professor what that word means? Or do you want to be like, hey, what is this word real quick? Because I don't know
Mhm.
what it means. You know, it's kind of the same thing, but when they're little, it's intimidating maybe asking in front of the whole class or
Mhm.
asking the teacher, where if there's partner reading, it might be a little bit more of a relaxed setting,
Mhm.
and a more natural environment.
I mean, we can kind of relate with that, right? Like even as adults in a smaller group setting, we're able to say things, ask questions without feeling like, oh my God, is this a dumb question?
Right.
People are gonna look at me weird. So I mean, I even being an adult, I relate to that as a kid. And
Right.
like
Same.
the comprehension things too. Like I feel like when I was a young reader, reading was always a difficult task for me, even to this point, because I feel like I read, but I don't always understand what I'm reading. So I have to go very slowly. So
Yeah, I have to go super slow when I'm reading, like depending on what like the content is.
Mhm.
And because I could read like 6 pages and then I'd look back and be like, what did I just read? I
same.
don't remember, but I read them. So I kind of have to like go slow and I have to like connect it back to like experience that I've had when I read things like that. And with my students over the summer, we focused a lot because I was in summer camp at our school and I was in the room with kindergartners going into first grade. So we focused a lot on easy readers. I don't know if anyone else has like easy readers, but they're basically books that we have and they're based off of level, and like the whole thing is like, oh, you start at level A and then you move up and each level gets more difficult. So kids
Mhm.
are super into like, well, I'm on level I'm on level H. Like they get super competitive, love it.
Mhm.
But I used to have students that would like, they would read the page and the pages only had like 2, 3 sentences on them max. So I'd have them read it and they'd always like get stuck at a word or two. And then they would read it and they would try to just flip to the next page. And I'd always be like, dude, like, let's stop. Like, let's read it again. Let's sound out the word. I'll read it. Like, you read it. And, like, it's kind of like partner reading, like what you said, Crystal. And then I would have them do it again. So they'd get stuck. And then I would say the word for them and I would sound it out with them. And then I'd have them reread the page again, kind of get used to having that word in the
Mhm.
sentence that it's in without hesitating because they know what the word is now and they know how to sound it out, which really helped a lot of them. And you could like kind of see their progress throughout the whole summer. Um, and then kind of, and then we watched a video in Tate's last class about the partnered reading where you were saying like, oh, ask your partner. I cannot remember what the video was about, but I remember in the video the girl they would have a partner and they would read back to back.
Mhm.
So they would kind of like read out loud and the partner would like read along with them and like the partner would like correct them if they got a word wrong. So
Mhm.
I kind of like that because like I feel like when you're reading in a group and like, oh, wasn't it the worst like back in the day, like when you'd sit like at your desk and you'd have like go along your reading and you'd mess up on a word and the whole class would correct you.
Mhm.
Maybe just me.
No, it's bad.
Super embarrassing.
So I would
Super
hate popcorn
embarrassing.
reading. I would try to
Yes.
know which line was going to be mine
Yes.
beforehand, and I'd like zoom ahead, like, okay, I've got 5 people ahead of me. There's this. Okay, this is gonna be mine. And somehow someone would use the bathroom and it'd switch it up on me. It'd be terrible. So I understand.
Yeah.
I still read with Alexa.
that.
I always do my audible books. Technically,
Yeah.
I'm reading, right? But
My
follow
favorite is
along.
when you're like reading a book and it's like a book for like leisure instead of like for school or something like that. You're reading, you go along and like you like look up like different things or someone else is reading it and they pronounce a word completely different than you do in your head. And you're just kind of like, that's not how that sounds. That's so weird. I've had that happen so many times. And like I feel like some kids like have anxiety when reading. Popcorn game definitely has added to my anxieties. Any reading aloud in front of the class, a nightmare.
Oh yeah, I used to have a teacher like for grammar who would make us, I mean, this is when I was older, but still middle school. He would make us like stand up And if you got like the word wrong, you would have to stand up like the entire time until you got it right. So like, you know, you would go in a row. So like, say you got it wrong, like you still had to stand up. You would go in the row again, you got it wrong, you still had to stand up. And then eventually, you know, there's only like 1 or 2 people down. It was
That's
the
so
worst.
belittling.
Yeah,
my
it's
God.
I know, I feel like it's yeah, honestly, like he liked to like put you on the spot.
I'll be like, can you spell this word?
I know.
Let's hear you
That's
spell
kind of
it.
like singling kids out to be picked on.
Right,
Like, don't
right.
do that.
Oh my God, he totally did that all the time. And then I had him like, this is off topic, but I had him for like another class, like for speech, and we had to like go up there. We didn't know what the topic was. And we had to go up there and talk for at least 2 to 3 minutes. And he would tell you as soon as you get up there. So, you know, you couldn't know it before, like, so you couldn't prepare for it. And you weren't supposed to say and, like, or So, and then I had to act out other stuff. Like, oh my God, like it was.
I would have failed in a heartbeat.
It still makes me sweat to this day.
Wow.
That makes me think about when I was first started going to school and I was going to Harold Washington College, and we had a speech. I had a public speaking class, and the professor, very proper lady. I mean, very proper. And so when I did my presentation, you know, she would always get me about the word ask. So she said, no, it's not ask, it's ask. I was like, okay. So when I did my last presentation, I said, ask. And she just looked at me like,
Hey, at least you learned something, right? Isn't
right.
that-
So you can't say that I said ask. Right. And she kind of laughed because she knew why I did it. And I was like,
Right.
and everybody in the class knew why, because I think she got a lot of people with that, you know. But you can't single kids out, and that does make them not want to try and make them
Totally.
withdraw within themselves and kind of be like, oh, I'll never get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
my
I had my
sister.
one of my friends is a teacher. That's how she is. She says she thinks that's why she doesn't like to read, because when she was in school, her teacher made her feel so bad.
Yep, that was my sister with a learning disability, but she got put in the behavioral class because they didn't differentiate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So she was in the bad kid class, but she just couldn't, she didn't know what she was doing. And they were thinking that she was trying to be a smart aleck or trying to,
Yeah.
you know, like, I don't even know what they could
And
think.
back then
but
they used
she
to put them
was-
all together anyway,
Yeah.
They do. They really do.
Yeah.
Which
And it's
didn't help-
just terrible.
which didn't
It
help a
is.
kid who had a learning disability to be in their classroom full of clowns. It's like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
It's like you in a room full of cut-ups. They're really not gonna
Yeah,
learn
I have
anything.
I have a kid now who is in our structure program. He has behavioral issues, but like it's clear like he doesn't have like autism. So a lot of times, like if a kid has autism, like they're very unaware of like things that are going on. So like if a kid is having a meltdown, like a lot of times like the kids just they're not aware, or like even like doing worksheets. And he's so smart. Like when another kid, because my other students are not aware, but when another kid like does something ahead of him, or they're working on the same thing, like he knows to like look at that and to do what they're doing. Or when a kid like acts up or misbehaves, like he does that. But yeah, I know even too, like the woman that I work with too think that he's in the wrong program. I love him though. He's my baby. He's my favorite. So all right. Are you guys good?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, because in my class, I don't have any fluent readers or writers.
Mhm.
I mean, they're writers of their own language.
Right.
But I don't have any.
Inventive writing.
Yeah. Do we not have to do part discussion 2 of this?
We did. We just did it.
The after watching the video?
Oh,
I thought we picked one.
no, that's discussion too.
No, that was for the first one. We had to do 2 parts. The second one, we only have to do 1. And we did the first one.
Okay. So we don't have to create the lesson plan that's at the very bottom here?
No.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna hop off then if that's okay.
Okay.
No, it's not, Emily. Can't leave.